Welcome everyone, and I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. My name is TJ Horgan. I'm a research support officer with UCC Marai, and I manage the Selkie project. Selkie is an Ireland Wales Wave and Tidal Energy Cooperation Programme funded by the EU and administered by WEFO. Partners are UCC, Swansea University, DP Energy, Gavin and Doherty Geosolutions, Marine Energy Wales, and Minto Mon. Selkie aims to have a connected network of marine renewable energy, maritime and engineering SMEs across Ireland and Wales, 150 or more. And Selkie, we are developing standardized open source engineering, economic, multi-use technology tools, templates, standards, and models, especially designed for this sector, including, just make that full screen, including this geographic information system and techno-economic model. This tool has increased resolution and the most up-to-date geospatial data representing all potential opportunities, constraints, and restrictions. It will provide device-specific techno-economic recommendations for wave and tidal energy designs. The result will be the development of the first true GIS TE tool in renewable energy and bespoke to Irish and UK waters. The aim of this session is to see what extra layers could benefit your business. Now, the work package leader on this is Ross O'Connell. Ross is a PhD student at Marai's Beaufort Building in Cork. He's an MSc in Geography and Geoinformatics from the University of Copenhagen, a higher diploma in Geography from UCC, and a BSc in Project Management from Cork Institute of Technology. He's also taking credited courses in coastal and marine management at the University Centre of the Westfjords in, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, in Iceland. On the panel as well today, we have Rebecca Furlong. Rebecca is a research master's student on the Selkie project, having joined us in November. She has an undergraduate degree in Earth and Ocean Sciences from the National University of Ireland, Galway, and a diploma in the Geographic Information Systems from Dublin Institute of Technology. Following her undergraduate degree, Rebecca went on to gain practical work experience using GIS as a project geologist for an exploration company based in the Irish Midlands, followed by a position as a GIS consultant for an international engineering firm. Plenty of real work experience here. Okay, that's the brief introduction from me. Is Ross available?
Yeah, can you hear me, TJ?
I can.
Okay, so I'll need to share my screen now. Do I just press this? Okay, I think I have it here. Okay. So, can you see the presentation there?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So, hi everyone. Thanks for attending the session, and thanks to the organizers for inviting Work Package 4 of the Selkie project to present. We won't keep you too long. So, what are we doing? We're developing a geoeconomic tool for Irish and Welsh wave and tidal energy enterprises and developers. This presentation will mainly focus on the GIS side of things, since that's the section that we've worked on more so far. And since I know you've been talking about a lot of techno-economic and LCOE stuff already, so we won't bore you to tears with more of that. So the tool will basically propose sites and produce techno-economic recommendations for Irish and Welsh MRE technologies, allow for identification of potential sites, and then the TE element will be built into the GIS to assess project feasibility at these sites. So we have 4 deliverables. The first one is complete, which is now with renewable and sustainable energy reviews for hopefully a publication on. We're now at the deliverable 4.2 stage, which is the development of the tool itself and subsequent validation using our demo partners. And following this will be a techno-economic report and recommendations for both the wave and tidal case study. So we're about just under halfway through at the moment. So in the review, we discovered many GIS and techno-economic tools that are geared for renewable energy applications. Few of them are suitable for wave and tidal energy applications or adopt a GIS. They either adopt a GIS or a techno-economic focus without a combination of both. And are limited by a lack of up-to-date, high-resolution information on the specific sites. Any tools that are performing LCOE, NPV outputs, etc., are usually not open access from what we found as well. So the tool is being built in JavaScript using Visual Studio Code and Esri's JavaScript API. We chose JavaScript obviously because it's the most commonly used language for web-based applications, supports all modern browsers. It's a client-side language allowing for user interaction, which is what we'll need, and allows extended functionality to web pages. So the GIS layers that we've considered so far are shown here. We have things like the marine plan areas for both Ireland and Wales, the territorial limits, the designated maritime boundaries, local authorities in the EU, Ireland, Wales region. You can see we have protected sites. We're planning a visualization assessment layer. The seabird distributions, fish spawning grounds, aquaculture sites, existing sites of existing MRE sites from both the UK and Ireland, energy, oil and gas sites and pipelines, Irish and Welsh ports considered capable of facilitating MRE deployment and maintenance. Electrical grid stations, which is a layer that we're working on at the moment. The data was freely available for the UK, but we've had to create it for here on the Irish side. We have shipping density. We'll have a shipping density layer, which will, in that category, will also have commercial fisheries, shipwrecks, military zones, etc. You can see all the list of ocean features that we plan to include there. I won't go into too much detail. Seabed geology, so we have obviously bathymetry, seabed substrates, in other words, sediment classification, which is crucially important to site selection. And we have marine aggregates going down to miscellaneous. We may include a land cover layer for both Ireland and Wales. And then in terms of the resource, we'll have wave energy, tidal stream energy layers. We may also include some offshore wind layer as well. In terms of the resource, I'm just going to hand you over to Rebecca, who is working more on the resource modeling side of things than myself. So she's just going to speak for a few moments in relation to that. Rebecca, are you there?
Thanks, Ross. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yeah.
Thanks very much for the introduction, and thanks to everyone who has joined the session today. I'll keep my bit pretty brief. So I'm working mainly on the resource calculation for both the wave and the tidal energy, and then I'll be working on converting that so that we can open it up in GIS, and then Ross can add that to the model so that it can be used for the techno-economic calculations and the site selection. So just to start with the wave energy resource assessment, I'm hoping to develop an updated resource layer that covers the whole of our study area, which is the Irish and Celtic Sea, and down just slightly off the west coast of Ireland as well. There's a number of different numerical models available for getting sea parameters such as WaveWatch 3, SWAN, and Mike 21. And using these models, we can get parameters such as wave height and wave periods, which we need to calculate the wave power. And a lot of these models are actually available through the European Copernicus website. So I'm hoping to use the data from the models that are available through Copernicus and to hopefully get a 20-year time series and develop a new wave energy resource layer. Some of the models that I've identified, we can get a 20-year time series, and they have some really good resolution. I've been looking at one that has about 3 kilometers in resolution. So we're hoping it will give us a detailed energy resource layer. If you want to go on to the next slide, Ross. So then I'll hopefully follow a similar step for the tidal energy resource assessment. There's also data available through Copernicus for the tidal data. We're looking at current speed and depth. So I've identified some models that we're hoping to use, also looking at a 20-year time series of data. And one of the models that I have already identified has about 50 depth levels available with current speed. So for both the wave and the tidal energy resource assessment, I'll take the data that's in NetCDF format, bring it into MATLAB to calculate the resource. And then using MATLAB, I'll convert it to a file that's suitable for use in GIS. If you want to quickly go on to the next slide then, Ross. So these are just some examples of some resource layers that are currently openly available. You might recognise the website. There's the Irish Marine Renewable Energy Atlas and the Wales Marine Planning Portal. So in those sites, you can access some energy resource layers for both wave and tidal energy, but you can see that the Irish layers just cover Irish territory, and the same for Wales. So I'm hoping to have a layer that covers our whole study area. So it will look similar to this, and then Ross will be able to use that layer interactively in the techno-economic calculations, and we can do some analysis and use it for the site selection as well. I think that's about all from me. Thanks, Ross.
That's perfect. Thanks, Rebecca. Can you hear me now again?
Yeah.
So that's just coming close to the end of our presentation. This is just kind of an overview taken from one of the figures in the review paper, which kind of shows the overall layout of how the tool will work. So up at the top, you have the inputs for identifying the suitable sites, which we're still working on. We've sent out a survey to wave and tidal energy developers who have got back to us with some of their key hard constraints identified for running our site suitability GIS model. So following on from the suitable sites, we'll then use the techno-economic calculator to consider all of the inputs for LCOE, NPV, and IRR, which is kind of the next stage of what we'll be doing in the development of the tool. So yeah, this is just the overall summary. We plan increased resolution and site relevance of resource data, focusing specifically on Irish and Welsh waters, up-to-date geospatial data representing all the potential opportunities, restrictions and constraints, comprehensive device-specific techno-economic functionality for contemporary wave and tidal energy designs, and hopefully improved user friendliness for the end user. That concludes the presentation. So we'll take any questions or suggestions from the audience.
Thanks very much, Ross and Rebecca. I'm looking at the chat. There don't seem to be any questions coming in. Oh, there's one from Caitlin McCarthy. Can you see that question, Rebecca?
Just reading it now, TJ. Thanks for the question. So at the minute, we're just planning on having an average over the 20 years. But I think that actually is a really important point, that maybe you could look at the difference over the years or the season. So I think that should be worth taking into account.
Okay, I hope that answered your question, Caitlin. We have one in from Paul Bonner. Can you take this one, Ross?
Yep. So, are there key GIS data which you haven't been able to find for the Ireland-Wales region? Are you confident you have good coverage for site selection studies? So just taking the first part of the question, some of the key GIS data that we were missing until just very recently, that I brought up in the presentation, was the locations of grid access in Ireland, which we actually had to use a base map, an OpenStreetMap base map, to a combination of that, and we had a map from AirGrid of the locations roughly where the sites were. So we had to actually zoom in on the Google or on the OpenStreets base map and pick them off one by one, which was a very excruciating process and took a whole weekend. But that's I'm sure there are other things that we'll probably think of further down the line as well. That will pop up. In terms of confidence that you have good coverage for site selection studies, so for the in terms of coverage, if what you mean by that is in relation to the resource data, we will have the models that Rebecca is focusing on. They cover the entirety of the study area. They're generally focusing on Northwestern Europe. Rebecca will probably divide it into separate areas because, well, especially for the wave energy resource assessment layers, the calculation of the resource on the Atlantic coast in comparison to the Irish Sea needs to consider a different wave spectrum. So the calculation in MATLAB will be different. She'll be using a wave period ratio that's already been derived in a study of the west coast of Ireland for that, and then for the Irish Sea she'll be using the John Swaps spectrum, which is more applicable to sheltered sites, generally with a fetch less than 750 kilometers. I'll just keep going here. There's a few more questions. How do you promote trust amongst users of information derived from your tool? I don't really know what that means, but basically, when the tool, I think, when the user will open the tool, there'll be a disclaimer which will have all of the terms and conditions written out before, which the user will have to agree to before entering the tool itself. If that's what you mean by that, David.
I think, Ross, if I might just add on that point, I think if it's referring to trust in the sources of the data as well, we can add in the source to the metadata, so that when you click on the layer, you could have some information there about where we sourced the data from, what date it was sourced on, so that you know how old the layers are and how often they're being updated. I mean, for the resource layers as well, we can put in the information of the models that were used and the parameters, that can all be added to the metadata of the layers, so that whoever is using the tool actually understands where the data is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that I've already built into the JavaScript code, that any layer in the tool will have an information symbol on it, which the user will be able to click, and that will pop up the metadata window. Within the metadata window, the user will be able to click to the link to the source site of the data. We won't have anybody else's data publicly available to download on our tool itself, but there will be a link to the source itself, who will have their own, download pages with their own restrictions, etc. So that's how we intend to address that. The next one is from Mr. Bahaj. It would be good to have these considerations published for the marine energy communities to see and scrutinize. If you are interested, you could contact the International Marine Journal, which is specific for marine renewables. Okay, thanks very much for that link. We'll definitely consider them for maybe a future publication. Hannah Torrance Spence says, thank you very much for the presentation. Will you be including grid infrastructure layers, and we will be doing extreme wave analysis? So yeah, I've kind of addressed the grid infrastructure one. We intend to not only have the location of grid substations in both Ireland and the UK, but a layer that will show the proximity from the closest substation in the study area. And we will only be taking substations that are greater than 110 kilovolts. It seems like that's what the industry are not really. They're interested in anything less than that, because there's a number of 38 kilovolt sites in rural locations here in Ireland, but we won't be including them. But yeah, the layer, the proximity layer, will allow the user to click anywhere in the study area, and from that, they will be able to see exactly the distance from the closest substation point in the study area. And there will also be a measurement tool that they can just validate that if they want using the measurement tool. In terms of the extreme wave analysis, that's something that we've also considered. All right, probably we'll be waiting until we have the 20-year hindcast. Do you want to comment on that, Rebecca?
Yeah, I mean, I think the extreme wave analysis will be really useful. I think in terms of my work, it might just be down to some time limitations, as I'm only doing a research master's. So I think if we do have some time, once I have the initial wave and tidal resource generated, I think the extreme wave analysis will be really helpful to add into the tool. I think it would also be worth like a future consideration for the team working on this.
Thanks, Rebecca. Will I have time for one more question, TJ? Or
yes.
Okay, so Paul again says, thank you. I think adding sources for further reading on specific data layers would be very useful in giving the user greater confidence. Thanks, Paul. David says, thanks for the answers I was looking for. I agree metadata is critical, as is potential access to underlying data. That seems to be generally about it, TJ. There weren't really questions, more comments, so thanks for everyone's comments, and thanks for the questions as well. Seems like we're just on time here, unless anybody else has anything to add.
Yeah, I think Ross, just finally from me, as TJ said, you can get in touch with the at the Selkie booth. I think we're both very open to any suggestions of layers you think might be helpful to add. Obviously Ross put up a list there, but if you think that there's something there that we haven't thought of, it would be really helpful to hear from you.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Rebecca.
That's excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I'd just like to say thank you as well to Sophie Crouch. She is in charge of our business engagement. So any questions at all, or if you want to become involved or contribute to the project, please get in touch through our booth. That's it. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thanks to all for participating.